All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of our 2024 virtual education series presented by the San Diego chapter of Women in Aviation International. My name is Lily Roberts. I'm the membership chair for our chapter, and I'm excited to host tonight. Our mission for this education series is to get information out to you guys, to our members. But along with informing, we also want to connect, engage, and inspire. That is the mission of Women in Aviation International. And so we're happy to have women from all types of aviation backgrounds in our membership. And tonight we're going to hear from Tamara Graham. She is a retired captain with the U.S. Navy. And this is a little bit about her before she gets started. Captain Graham was a naval officer and aviator with 30 years of active duty experience. Her operational tours included multiple deployments on various aircraft carriers throughout Southeast Asia, Asia, and the Middle East, flying H-60 helicopters as part of the U.S. Navy's Carrier Air Wing. She has served as a flight instructor, Seahawk weapons and tactics instructor, and was honored to command the legendary Black Knights of HS-4. Her staff tours include managing theater security cooperation and security force assistance for the Special Forces community throughout the Indo-Pacific, and supporting the Navy's professional education and leader development mission as the Chief of Staff of the Naval War College. Captain Graham has a degree in biology from the University of Virginia and a master's in national security studies from the Naval War College. She has over 3,200 flight hours and has been blessed to work with amazing teams that have led to her selection for various leadership and professional awards. She is currently the Deputy Director of the CNAF Legacy Office, supporting leader development and naval aviation outreach. And we want to thank you, Captain Graham, for joining us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lily. Thank you for the gracious introduction, and thank you for having me here tonight. It's an awesome opportunity to engage the group. I have a long connection with WAI, and it has always been rewarding and exciting. So any opportunity I have to give back into this process, I'd love to take it. I'll start real quick. Obviously, a quick rundown on my bio there, but as I said, captain in the Navy. I retired just under a year ago. And when I was young, I did not dream of flying per se. I was an adventurous kid. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And in honor of Mother's Day and my mom, I like to highlight the fact that back in the very early 70s, girls didn't get to do a lot of the things you get to see today. And so at one point in time, I told my mom, I think it was about 5, and I said, it's boring being a girl. I wish I were a boy. And she was totally shocked, like, oh my God, how could this be? So she spent the next several years of my life highlighting women who were doing pretty awesome stuff, whether that was flying C-130s in the Air Force. My dad was an Air Force officer, or women diving with Jacques Cousteau. So there was always that mindset that you can do whatever you want and you can follow your dreams. So given the fact I knew I needed to go to college, but wasn't sure how I was going to pay for it, I applied for a couple ROTC scholarships. And so I was selected for both an Air Force scholarship, which basically pays your 4 years of school, tuition, books, and fees, and then you owe time in the service afterwards. And then I also got picked up for a Navy scholarship. And so as a chippy little 17-year-old sitting in my my homeroom in high school, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And one of my good friends said to me, I was like, what should I do, Air Force or Navy? And she's like, well, I think you look better in navy blue. And I'm like, okay, that's one thought. And then I was like, well, I could be in Minot, North Dakota, or I could be near an ocean. And I'm like, Navy it is. So so that was how my my adventure started. I was lucky enough to get into and attend the University of Virginia on my scholarship. And so they paid for 4 years of my education there. And I met some of the most amazing people through that process and got a chance to do summer training and see what the Navy was like, because I literally had no clue. In the process of some of that training, I flew in a TA-4 jet, which I thought was pretty cool, but was not what I expected. And then the next week I got to fly in a H-53 helicopter with the Marines. And I was sitting between the two co-pilots, and we're cruising over a lake, and we hit the treetops, and we're yanking and banking, and I thought, this is what I want to do. And so based on that, I took my tests and applied and was picked up for Naval Aviation as a student. I highlight that because I went off to flight school without a single lick of flight time whatsoever. I was a student Naval Aviator, and in the Navy training process, they basically look for you to have an aptitude and certainly good grades and good spatial relations skills, and then they train you from 0 to wings through that process. So it was about 3 years from when I started flight school to when I earned my wings of gold. And that's kind of the start of my journey here. And so I'm gonna breeze through a couple slides just to kind of talk through a few things, also highlight a little bit about what the Navy is about, and then hopefully have a chance to answer some questions. So give me just one brief moment here. All right, this is still me. Let me get rid of this on the screen. If I can, okay. Are you seeing a hide screen logo? All right, I should probably click on it on the right one. There we go. That's much more helpful. And then I think we went sideways. Are you seeing the whole brief? Okay. Can I get a thumbs up?
Yep, I can see the presentation slides.
Okay, it's not a skin of it.
It's not what? I'm sorry.
Like mine is truncated a little bit, but I might have messed up with my screen. So
I can see the full thing, I believe.
Okay, excellent. Then I'll press from there. My apologies, poor fam work on my part. So, so again, this is me. One of the things I want to highlight is like, what is the Navy? And a lot of people didn't even know Navy actually flew aircraft. I know Top Gun has probably inculcated some brains, but I remember we were celebrating the 100th anniversary of Naval Aviation, and that was over a decade ago. And as a bunch of Navy aircraft were flying by in San Diego, which is a Navy city, people went, oh, look, it's the Air Force. So trying to highlight what we do and who we are out there. And so here's the Navy's mission, obviously defending freedom, economic prosperity, and then keeping the seas free and open. And I usually like to highlight, everybody learned in 8th grade science, we've got, 2/3 of the earth is covered in oceans. Most don't recognize that over 80% of the world's goods travel by ocean, and 95% of our telecoms are in cables underneath the sea. And so those are important things that we try and keep safe through our mission sets around the globe with our partners and allies. So the Navy is about 330,000 folks, and 1/3 of those people are actually in Naval Aviation. Just to highlight, there's officers and enlisted, and so your pilots as well as naval flight officers who typically operate the systems, sit in the back of our aircraft, are also trained in flight. We make up about 12,000 people writ large, and I've got the stat up there. About 13% women of our flyers. I highlight that because when I started 30 years ago is when they just removed the combat exclusion. I think we were only about 2% women total. So we've certainly grown a ton since then. We are trying to grow more, which is one of the reasons we are constantly doing outreach to let people know what their opportunities are. On the enlisted side, we're about 20% women, just short of that. On our enlisted skills, basically, they're the ones that are doing aircraft maintenance, doing technical work, those types of things. If there is a job that you can think of that you could do anywhere, you could do it in the Navy. And typically on that picture of the aircraft carrier you can see right now, there's 5,000 people, and it is a living city with its own TV station, multiple kitchens, they do everything. So you can be a cook, you can be a musician, you can do whatever you like. And certainly the focus here is working on high-end, really incredible aircraft, which are great opportunities. As far as our airframes, we have just about 2/3 the size of what the Air Force flies, so around 3,000 aircraft, 22 platforms, give or take, as we're transitioning some in and some out. and that includes our training aircraft. And then we also have about 144 squadrons. So that's kind of the breakdown of flying the same type of aircraft with a command structure that facilitates getting that tactical mission done. Shipwise Naval Aviation also owns all our aircraft carriers, and there are 11 of them. And I think right now 6 to 7 are actually out at sea, whether that's deployed in the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf or in the Indo-Pacific or right off the coast here in San Diego or Norfolk doing training and getting ready. So quite a busy place with a lot going on, and again, a lot of people making it happen. Additionally, we also support a number of the other ships. So the Navy is just short about 300 vessels writ large, many of which are capable of taking aircraft on board, typically helicopters. So I know planes are the bigger focus here, so I just kind of wanted to touch on the general stuff that we fly. There's 3 general categories. There's rotary, which includes our H-60s and our new Osprey, the V-22, which is in the center there. Our big wing, which are typically land-based. So you've got our P-8, which is on the middle far right. That's basically the Navy's version of a 737. They're used to do airborne intelligence, hunt submarines, and do signals analysis. So really impressive plane that can do a lot. We are always jealous of them as those who are out on boats last time, because they shore base and they collect a lot per diem, and they have a lot of fun. So that's our P-8 community, which is pretty big. Underneath that is the E6, which is a 707 model. And this I didn't even know until I was going to flight school, that you can be a naval aviator and deploy to Oklahoma City. That is where they fly out of. Their primary job is to be that node in the sky that connects the president and the National Command Authority to the nuclear submarines that are deployed around the world. So they have a very critical mission, a big focal point writ large for all of us, keeping them up and going. And there are 2 squadrons, as I said, out of Oklahoma City, and they have quite a contingent of skilled folks in the back that help manage all that. So kind of a unique mission set that not typically what you think of. Going back to the last segment is our TAC Air or tailhook aircraft, and that's what most people I think are probably familiar with from Top Gun and you know, your cool movies like I Want to Fly Jets stuff. So you've got the F-18 Super Hornet in the upper left-hand corner. On the far right-hand corner is the Growler, which is an F-18 body that's been modified with electronic attack and support capabilities. So jamming pods and some other things. Both are 2-seat, so it's got a pilot and a Wizzo in the back, or as I always say, Goose from the original Top Gun, or Bob if you're a fan of Top Gun 2 Maverick. So they often operate the sensors and the weapon systems. The big aircraft with the dome on top is our E2. That also deploys on the aircraft carrier as part of the air wing. They are kind of like the big eyes in the sky, if you can think of a combat air controllers. So same as sitting in a tower and managing the flow of aircraft around an airfield and making sure everybody's safe. That's what the E2 does once it's airborne, only it does that also in an environment where you're taking on what could be aggressor aircraft and helping orchestrate a fight if need be. And then below that is our latest and greatest, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. Our model of that has a tailhook as well. So there's 3 different variants. The Air Force flies them, as well as the Marine Corps, which has a V-stall, so it can pull into a hover basically and land. Ours is manned with a tailhook, and it is a single piloted aircraft. And we have, I want to say, 3 squadrons so far that have been integrated, and they are replacing our F-18s over the course of time here. I will hit up certainly the helicopters a little bit more in the next, because that's what's really near and dear to my heart. So, all right, so here's the gratuitous helicopter picture, because this is what I flew. Lots of different mission sets. Had a chance to fly over land, over water, working with special forces on night vision goggles, which is a really unique piloting experience, because everything's in 2 dimensions, yet you're flying in 3, especially when you're landing in an unprepared environment out in the dirt. And so it's challenging and fun, and that's definitely the methods by which we can be a little bit more stealthy when we're working around the globe as necessary. The picture I like to highlight to the middle left, that is a Carnival cruise ship. That's actually a picture of me, and you never know what's happening in your day in the Navy. I was out to sea on the Ronald Reagan. I was the second in command of the squadron at the time, and I think I had alert that day. And I was woken up at about 6 and told, "Hey, we need to go rescue a Carnival cruise ship." And I was like, "What? This is like a joke, right?" And they're like, "No, come to the ready room." And so they had a underway challenge, like a fire, and they were dead in the water. The Mexican Navy was coming out to try and help them, but in the meantime, they were challenged with a fair number of things. So we ended up vert-repping, or vertical replenishment, water and food to the Carnival cruise ship. And so a very unique experience is I sat left seat, and typically on the right side is where the flying pilot sits. And so I will never forget, as we're coming over the edge of that stack, it's where the running track is, and they'd taken some of the wires down so we wouldn't hit anything. And I told my co-pilot, I'm like, if you hover between the slide and the mini golf skull, you'll be perfect. and so that's what he did. And we brought a bunch of stuff over, and they were able to load it on board. We also had a fair amount of photographs taken, because I'm sure if any of you have taken a pleasure cruise, the last thing you expect coming across the top end of your ship is a large Navy H-60. So random sea story, but I laugh every time I see that photo. So also vertical replenishment, one of our 5 mission sets there. Talked a little bit about the aircraft and some of the missions, but really what makes the Navy and Naval Aviation a special place is the people. I've gotten to do a number of really incredible things, and it's really just about opportunity through my time in the service. I'll highlight 2 kind of mission-oriented things that were unique and that really meaningful for me as far as doing the job. And one was, as a helicopter pilot, I got to forward deploy into Iraq with my crew, and that's the middle and top right pictures. And we were supporting the forces with the Brits in the southern portion of Iraq, out of Basra, as well as our special forces folks, and working with the convoys that were running up and down the supply routes. And in the midst of, I mean, it was incredible flying. A lot of it was daytime because we were doing a fair amount of reconnaissance work and oversight, and making sure those guys were safe on the ground. But in the midst of all that, you have these moments that you just don't expect, where I remember just looking around, and we were bringing some SEALs up towards the center of the country, and we're flying over the Euphrates River, and there are palm trees everywhere and adobe huts, and it looked like something right out of the Bible. And we're at about 50 feet, and it's fairly calm, and you look around and you think, I've read about this place in history books, and here I am flying 50 feet off the Euphrates River in the middle of what looks like a Bible scene. It was pretty cool. We also had a moment, just come as we call when you go from over water to over land, it's called going feet dry. And just as we were going feet dry, and it was dawn, and a whole flock of pink flamingos came flying by under the aircraft. And again, the things you don't expect to see when you're out doing the mission, that are really kind of incredible moments and opportunities that really come from aviation writ large, but certainly Naval Aviation gets to put you in some pretty cool places and part of history there. So an incredible crew, working with those folks for about 4.5 months, and got to do a lot of really interesting and meaningful work there. So that was challenging, but also a lot of fun and great flying. The lower right-hand corner is a picture from my time as a executive officer, second in command of a squadron deployed along the Ronald Reagan. We went into Japan after the tsunami hit the island of Honshu, and this was back in March of 2011. It had taken out a huge swath of the island, and Japan had asked that we support them with humanitarian disaster relief efforts. And so we came in there, and that's a picture as we landed. It was brutal conditions with snow, freezing, the water. We were in dry suits, and then to add to the fun, the nuclear power plant along the coast started to melt down, and so we were dealing with some of the radioactive debris from that. So there were a lot of complications, but the people of Japan were just amazing. If there's anybody you can go help, like there's no chaos, everything was organized. We'd fly in somewhere and there would be an H painted in the field of an old elementary school that was higher up the mountainside, so we'd know to be able to land there. And then when we landed, you can see that picture, they were so grateful and so gracious, and they supported us in supporting them. And I just like to highlight who are the folks that actually are out there serving, because sometimes you just think of people in a very two-dimensional way, that they're in the military and so they think a certain way. And as we were in the process of bringing all this relief ashore, the sailors on the ship found out where our ready room was. And so they went down to the ship store and bought all the little like TY bears that had Reagan on them and candy, and said, please bring this to the kids. And then I would land, and I get misty-eyed when I think about it. We'd land in a landing zone that our strike group had supported previously. And you would see the people there wearing the jackets that sailors had literally given to the helo crews to give to the people who'd lost everything. And it's incredible to see and be part of. And I think it's one of the most rewarding things I got to do as a Navy pilot. And I will say it was incredible to actually be in a leadership position for that as well. Because you get to see the greatness come out of your kids that are out there working hard on the flight deck. So two amazing experiences, separated probably by about 5 years in my time in service that I will never forget. The center picture is my dad pinning my command pin, standing on the midway, which was a pretty awesome experience. He commissioned me. He pinned my wings on, and then he was there to pin on my command pin, which are all three pretty big milestones in the career of Naval Aviation. So it was awesome to have both he and my mom there, but he got to do the honors that day. Closer to home, the top left picture is me and my daughter Erin, and next to us is one of the WASPs. So that was an event, again, about a decade ago that was co-sponsored by WAI San Diego and the Fly Girls film. And so they supported a panel of WASPs, and it was just amazing to be standing there in my flight suit next to a woman who literally was one of the first to ever put on flight gear, representing her nation, and go forth and do our difficult work in World War II. So pretty incredible. My daughter had no clue, as you could see by the look on her face, but a picture that I relish and quite a milestone. And what's even better, and I highlight this to this group especially, is that at the end of the panel event, the commemorative Air Force brought in a AT-6 and landed it, and that woman climbed in the back. I think she was 96 years old, and they went flying. And we had a number of other female aviators that were supporting. So I had a lieutenant who was an F-18 pilot, an E-2 pilot, some helicopter pilots. They're literally helping her into the aircraft, and they take off. And I want to say about 30 minutes later, they come back, and she has this massive grin on her face. And the pilot up front was like, oh my God, we got up there. And she said, can I have the controls for a minute? And I said, sure. And the next thing I knew, we were doing barrel rolls. and the young women who were helping her out of the aircraft were like, man, I could only pray to God that when I'm 96, that's who I'm gonna be and how I'm gonna be. And I think it speaks to the spirit of flying and the fun of it and the community that's built around it. And so it was just, like I said, I'm still inspired when I think about that, and the fact that she was up there bending the aircraft around the sky at the age of 96. So hopefully that's in my future. And then last I want to highlight is again a connection through WAI. In the lower left-hand corner, when I was the chief of staff out at the Naval War College, it is out in Newport, Rhode Island, which is also where our officer candidate school is. And the young woman next to me, I had a chance to commission her. Her name is Serena Hart. She was a waitress out here in San Diego when I first met her, who had her degree, really was interested in flying, not sure what she wanted to do or how to go about doing it, and just ended up kind of connecting through various people, got in WAI, and through that process, kind of learned a few different folks and applied. And then the next thing you know, she was going through OCS, and I was lucky enough to be there to actually commission her as an ensign. And she is now flying F-18 Growlers out of Whidbey Island and kicking butt landing on the aircraft carrier. So pretty awesome. Again, we all start from somewhere, and oftentimes we don't recognize the opportunities that are in front of us if we just take a chance on them. So, which I think are all important things to remember when we look at what lays ahead and who gets to do this cool stuff that we do. Kind of along those lines, the one last thing I wanted to highlight this evening is I don't know what goes through your social media feeds, but I see a lot of the first. And I sometimes get frustrated because we've done a lot of firsts. There have been women doing these jobs and these missions and doing them very well for quite some time. And this kind of collage of pictures are a bunch of Navy aviation women who have done amazing things and incredible milestones and way into the past. So their legacy is incredible, and they've blazed the path, and there are plenty of people who have followed. And so when you hear I did something in the third phase of the moon, blah, 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 like we've done it all. Like there is nothing out there, I think, that women in naval aviation haven't already done. And what you don't see up here is our all-female Super Bowl flyover, our first woman to be the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier who's also a Navy 60 pilot. You've got Sunny Williams on the picture in the upper left-hand corner, who is a Navy 46 pilot, a test pilot, and until recently had the longest time in space, almost 6 months out there with multiple spacewalks. And I believe she's going to be captaining the next SpaceX flight. I think they were supposed to take off last week and had some weather issues, but so she's still in the game, active duty Navy captain and Naval Aviator. Rosemary Mariner is top center. She was the first woman, one of the first 6 women to go through Navy flight school and get her wings. She was also the first woman to command a squadron. Beyond that, she was part of a cadre of women who worked really hard to change the rules and remove what at the time was called the Combat Exclusion Law, which didn't allow women to fly combat aircraft or deploy on combat ships. And without her incredible efforts and putting herself out there along with her peers, I would never have had the opportunities I did. So hats off to her for all the milestones that she achieved and the amazing doors that she opened on behalf of the rest of us. Along those lines, in the lower left-hand corner is a picture of the all-female flyover for her funeral service that occurred several years ago, which again was something we had never done before, but those are all women flying tactical jets, F-18s, did the missing man formation over her service in northern Tennessee, and it was a sight to behold, which is awesome. I think some of you might recognize Tammy Jo Schultz, who is famous for landing her Southwest Airlines aircraft after the engine blew and unfortunately took out one of the passengers and then filled with smoke with a calm voice on the radio and brought everybody else back safely. You might not know that she started as a Navy Prowler pilot and also actually was in one of the squadrons with Rosemary Mariner. So a lot of great stories. The lower side, I will say, on the right is another mentor of mine, which is now Admiral Joyner. She was the first F-18 CO, combat pilot, the first female CAG, which meant she was in charge of an entire air wing on an aircraft carrier deployed. And she is now a 3-star admiral and one of our most senior female aviators. So doing all sorts of great stuff. As I said, I like to highlight that because many barriers have been broken. And I don't want anyone to think that they would be trotting into rough waters or things that maybe hadn't been done or no one's figured out yet. So it's a long line of heroes that we kind of walk behind and stand on their shoulders. And so remember, if you're interested in doing this, there's someone who's done it before, and a lot of people who've done it before, and a lot of people are happy to give you a hand and figure out how to help make it happen. All right, so this is my question slide. I will roll out of this and stop sharing my screen. That is my daughter she'd be embarrassed to know I have her up on the screen, but she once told me she wasn't interested in flying until, this is an embarrassing story, recently she decided that maybe she did want to be a Navy pilot. And I said, well, what changed your mind? And she goes, well, after watching Top Gun 2. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm a Hilo Bubba. How could you possibly say that to me? You see me all these years in my flight suit doing stuff, and now Top Gun 2 is what's going to convince you. And then she earnestly said, and I thought this was great. She said, well, Mom, I want to be in a community where people give each other crap, but have each other's backs. She goes, that looks like a cool team to be part of. And then she looked at me and she goes, and to be honest, Mom, I want to have some of your stories too. And I thought, all right, I'm not mad at you anymore. It's all good. It's all good from here. So that's kind of my prepared remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions. And while you guys think about what you might have on your minds, I will see if I can stop sharing. And so I can have my face up on the screen as opposed to the slide
deck. Wonderful. Thank you, Tamara. That was really great. I have a couple questions that I thought about while you were speaking. So our chapter of Women in Aviation here in San Diego, we have members ranging in age from teenagers through almost 80 years old. So what is the age range for joining the Navy?
It depends on what you end up doing. And I will say there's a waiver for everything these days, but typically for aviation, if you want to fly, you need to have a 4-year degree, and that's part of becoming an officer, is to get your commission. As I said, I went in and they paid for my college. They actually also paid for my master's degree too, which was nice, and they paid for flight school. So there's some economic benefits, especially given how expensive things are. And up to about the age of 27 is, generally speaking, when they want you to be able to come in if you're going to be a pilot or a naval flight officer, because it is a physically taxing game, and they want to give you time to be able to get trained and then have a full career in the Navy if that's what you choose to do. Like I said, there are plenty of opportunities for waivers to do other things, and then lots of different avenues to get there, whether it's going through OCS after you've gotten your degree, or going through a scholarship program through ROTC, or getting picked up. There are other scholarships that part of the way through school that you can apply. And then basically you get paid a certain stipend. And then when you graduate, you go through OCS. So there's a lot of different ways to pay for school. And then if you already have your degree, then it's just a matter of walking in and talking with the recruiter. That said, it's there's test-wise, like they always look for good academics, physically fit, and then your spatial relations. So if you've ever taken an aptitude test for flying, I think those are fairly standard tests. That is part of the process in determining whether you're eligible or not.
Okay, great. And I was also wondering, when someone chooses to join the Navy, how much control do they have in choosing what their job is going to be? Do you get to sign up knowing that you're going to be flying helicopters, or is that something that happens? Is that decision made after you've already joined?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. There's a lot. It depends on what job you're doing and how you enter as to how much freedom you have. Specifically for flying, if you were to go through OCS, as in Officer Candidate School, so you have your degree, you think, I want to go fly in the Navy, you go to the recruiter, you sign up, they will guarantee you a spot to become a student naval aviator or a student naval flight officer. And then if anything happens during training that disqualifies you from doing this, you don't have to stay in the Navy and do something else. Once you start flight school, your platform choices are based on your performance and what we call the needs of the Navy. There's a real need for tactical air pilots, so jet pilots right now. So assuming you have good grades in flight school and that's what you want to do, then you'll probably have a chance to fly jets. But it really depends on your performance. Usually what happens is our flight school is broken down into a primary training. All of us are trained for fixed wing flight first. So I have about 235 hours in the T-34 Jet Ranger. Right now, the training aircraft is the T-6 fully glass cockpit. You do your flight time in that, and at about 6-month mark, when you finish, based on your grades, your whole class gets ranked for that, like whoever's graduating. And then you get to choose, and based on where your rank is. So if you are the top of your class, you get your first pick typically, and then down from there. So it depends on what's available, and then where you ranked out. If you go through a program like I did in ROTC, I was not guaranteed to go into aviation. So I would owe time to the Navy, regardless of whether I got a chance to go flying or not. And I would have to do it in a different community. And that could be driving ships, that could be submarines, I could be a Navy diver. Those are all other opportunities that I might have gone down, or if there weren't enough flight spots, so I'd have to pick something else. When it comes to the enlisted side, you typically enlist for a specific rating. So if you want to be an aircraft electronics technician, or do you want to be a power plants professional, so you're working on engines, assuming your ASVAB, which is the aptitude test, scores are good, they will sign you up for that particular job, and that's what you will go do. If you go in without a guarantee on something, then it could be, you could end up doing anything based on coming out of boot camp. So that's a little different, and it's always good if anyone's thinking about going to a recruiter, is to look at what those guarantees are depending on the path that you're taking.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, if somebody thinks they might be interested in joining the Navy, what's their first step? Who do they call, or where do they go to start that process?
Well, if it's somebody on this net, then you'll have my email, and you're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to help that process. But you can go to any, like, navyrecruiter.com, and I think we had talked about, we'll post when this video gets posted, some of those links, so that you can go right there. I met a young woman. She had just recently graduated from UC Davis at the conference in Orlando, the WAI conference, and she came to our Navy booth, and she was definitely very interested. And so she was talking with some of the folks and asking questions. And her degree was in like atmospherics. So I was like, I'm pretty sure you're pretty well aligned to be a good candidate here. And she just recently reached out to me. And so it's a couple months later, and she was very worried about just walking in and talking to the recruiter. And so that's a good place to go, but everybody's scared that if you walk in, this gate comes down, and you get locked in, and you've been sent off to Siberia somewhere. It's your freedom of action. So going and talking with a Navy recruiter, or going to Navy careers online, there's a ton of information that can kind of start going there. And then I always say, like, look in a network for people who do this, so that you can talk to them and understand what it's like. As I said, many people think of it like, oh, they do this, or someone else, or the people in the military are a certain way. The fact is that we're a complete reflection of society, and we have people from all over the place, to include, I had a lot of sailors that were actually not even US citizens, that had come from various countries in Africa, South America. And so it's just a real melting pot of good people that are striving towards a goal, and we are elevating kind of the mindset of our core values are honor, courage, and commitment. So we ask people to come in and embrace that. And if people don't uphold those standards, then we ask them to leave. And then for the most part, you end up with a pretty high caliber team when you actually go forward and deploy, because you rely on each other for so much when you're out to sea.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Well, we want to thank you, Tamara, for taking the time to come and present and talk to us about your career. It's fascinating. I think that I learned a lot, and I'm excited for people to get to see this video later on. Also, just wanted to say for anybody watching, to get more information about women in aviation in general and also Women in Aviation San Diego chapter, you can go to waisandiego.org to get info about joining our chapter and links to all of our opportunities that we have throughout the year. So thank you, Captain Graham. It was a wonderful presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks for all you guys do to inspire the young girls out there to chase their dreams.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Very good.